But let's officially kick off now. And I just want to start by saying a big welcome to everyone that's joined us here, all of our dreamers who are joining us. My name is Harvey, and I'm the Community and Marketing Manager for Cornerstone. And welcome to our team AMA, where every fortnight we tackle an important roadmap item and unpack it for the community. And before we get kind of stuck into our AMA topic, we will be going through a presentation. If you haven't already clicked into the watch stream section of this AMA in this voice channel, I recommend you do so. There's some incredible images and photos that we've attached to this to these slides that you don't want to miss, and also some videos. And you can watch that stream by just clicking on Olli's watch stream little tab, and a screen should pop up for you, and you'll be able to see everything that he's streaming from his screen. Now, kind of before we kind of get into our AMA topic for today, and before I introduce our panelists, I want to mention something that's quite important. And Olli, just I'll be sharing now about the South by Southwest. So if you can get that video ready. Basically, we have a team of people, as I've mentioned in a few of my announcements recently. We have a team of people from Cornerstone in Texas at the South by Southwest Festival, and we had a particular presentation a couple of days ago, and we had 700 people register to attend that presentation. And there were many big names that had attended that also: Tesla, KPMG, Apple. And so we have a short video from Tommy, who, if you don't know Tommy, he is our head of operations at Cornerstone, and he's shared that video with us so that we can share it with you, our community members. So why don't you play that for us, Olli, and then we can go from there.
So yeah, hey, it's Tommy here. We are here in the South by Southwest. This is one of the most interesting festivals connecting music, film industry, and the state-of-the-art technology, which is why we are, of course, here as well. I just wanted to make a little update that how things are going, and I just want to tell that this event has been super successful. We have met countless really important partnerships, really important brands that every single one of you most definitely know. I hope that I can share more information about that as soon as possible. And yeah, we came here to inspire people, to show the technologies, the state-of-the-art technologies and Cornerstone that we have been building, and people have been blown away. Unfortunately, we can't attend to the community event because Harvey and because we are here, and Harvey and Brian, Olli, everybody else back in the office, they will take totally care of you. But I just wanted to make this update so that you have a little something that what's happening here. Hopefully, more information soon. Cheers.
So there we have it. There's the head of operations at Cornerstone, Tommy, absolute legend. And just a little bit of an update from the South by Southwest Festival in Texas. From what he says in our team Slack, and then from what he seems to say here in the video, it's been massively successful. And I'm very excited to catch up with him and get on a call with him and hear from him about everything they got up to over in Texas. And unfortunately, you can kind of hear it in that video. He's a little bit raspy. His voice was a little bit croaky. He ended up getting the flu, so he's now back home in Finland, and he's quite sick. So unfortunately, he might need to take a day or two off. But it's great to get that update from Tommy about South by Southwest. But basically, I think we'll jump into our AMA. If you haven't already listened to the last 3 AMAs, I highly recommend that you take some time to listen to them on our YouTube channel. And I'm sure there's lots of things for you to mull over and to consider and to think about and listen to. There's lots of context for what we'll be discussing today. We've talked about in our first episode pixel streaming. In our second episode, we talked about engine of worlds. In our third episode, which was our last one, we talked about architecture in Cornerstone. So there's lots of topics, lots of content to cover there. And today we're kind of building on those last three AMAs, and we're talking today about how to build in Cornerstone. And in the panel with me, there are these three awesome people here with me. Firstly, we have Brian once again, who is the architect in Cornerstone. Then we have MCG, otherwise known as Matt. Now, Matt is a Cornerstone landowner, and he works professionally as an architect. And thirdly, we have Olli, who is the Cornerstone producer. Now, we have three goals that we want to achieve in this AMA today. The first is to inspire you with what's possible as a landowner. You're going to see some designs, you're going to see some technology, some up-and-coming technology that are going to blow you away. And our hope and our expectation is that you'll be inspired if you're a landowner to build on your land. Maybe these will give you some ideas. But if you're not a landowner, that's okay too. There's always the opportunity to become a landowner, in which you can make your dream come true and build on that land with some incredible architectural designs. So that's the first goal. The second goal is we want to give you information about how you can build your own structure within Cornerstone. There are different avenues, and so we want to talk about that. And then thirdly, we kind of want to just discuss something that's been very popular in social media recently, which is the contemporary use of AI technology. And so we want to unpack what we see as one of the options for the future of 3D modeling and why it's important to Cornerstone. Now, before we begin, I just want to remind you that you're welcome to ask any questions. In fact, we encourage you to ask questions because there will be a time at the end to answer some questions. So you can ask your questions in the main chat. You can ask it here in the voice channel chat. And we will, at the end, try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So take notes and try and think of some juicy, helpful, beneficial questions for the community, so that we can, deepen the conversation around how to build in Cornerstone. Olli, would you perhaps be able to run us through the structure of our AMA today? For those who don't know Olli, he's a real Jedi, as you can tell from his profile picture. And he was trained, was it by Yoda that you were trained, Olli?
Yes, actually it was. Just before he finished Luke Skywalker's training.
Of course.
That was the second to last Padawan that Yoda had.
Ah, right. Yep. Take it away.
Thank you, Harvey. So, hi everybody. First time you guys are hearing from me. I was behind the scenes very much in the last AMA, operating the stream and making sure that the videos were working. And now I finally get a chance to say hello to all of you. So, hello. Nice to meet you all. Good to be here. And yeah, as Harvey mentioned, we have some very exciting topics today. And just by starting off, just wanted to mention, sort of as a reminder for everybody, that since we're working on a project like Cornerstone that's visually very impressive and very high tech and all that sort of thing, it's sort of very easy to forget that behind all the cool stuff, all the materials that we released and all the videos and all the screenshots and the concept art and whatever, there's also something of a deeper vision and an actual idea behind the Cornerstone project, more than just what we see on a regular basis. And that that vision and that idea is very much summarized into what we call internally our mission, which is to build and create a democratized and sustainable metaverse. So, what that means is we want to allow anyone without the technical knowledge or the technical expertise to access, create, and even monetize their creations within the metaverse that we're building, while making sure that we don't destroy the planet that we are all living on and spending our lives on by, for example, utilizing technology that uses an unsustainable amount of resources, or destroy the human mind by, for example, writing algorithms that have a deteriorative effect on us as users and as human beings in the long run. So that's the idea. That's the mentality that we want to keep with us while we are creating what we are creating. And regarding today's topics, as we're talking about building in the metaverse, and we are talking about creating things inside Cornerstone, I also wanted to address our role as the Cornerstone team. And since we're not by any means new to this kind of thing, like we've been doing this sort of stuff for about 13 years as part of the Zoan group, during which time we've created some 700 virtual worlds. So we have a bit of experience under our belt, and we know what we're capable of, and we know what we're not capable of. And by saying that is me going back to addressing the role that we want to take in building the Cornerstone and making this metaverse happen. So we as a Cornerstone team realize that there's only so many of us, and we're not building this world for ourselves. So instead of us acting as a gatekeeper for all the content that is to be created and is being created, we don't want to be a bottleneck, but an enabler. So what we want to do is to create the infrastructure for Cornerstone and on Cornerstone, by which I mean that we want to create all the back-end stuff, all the computers, all the servers that make Cornerstone run as it does, all that tech sort of stuff, but also the infrastructure on the island. For example, the road networks, the plazas, the public stages, the infrastructure within the island. So even though we're working with partners like Nike or Meta or Amazon or Cartier to create all these fantastical and mind-blowing experiences within the metaverse, we also mainly want to give the power and the tools to the people so that they, alongside us, can create this amazing content for people all around the world to experience. And as we're doing this, and as we're building Cornerstone and planning for the future and talking to people about the whole project and our vision and our role and their role inside it, oftentimes we hear the question, what can I do as an individual, as a landowner? What can I do if I don't have that technical experience? If I don't have that technical expertise? What if I don't know how to 3D model? What can I do to participate? What can I do to create? And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. So a few different topics that we are discussing today. First of which I'll mention is something we call 3D AI, something that Harvey already mentioned a little bit about. Is if anybody's ever tried ChatGPT or Midjourney, all about that sort of creativity and fun and ease of use that we can get at best with these generative AI tools that we have nowadays. But aside from 3D AI, we were talking about these plot bundles that we mentioned in the last AMA a couple of weeks ago, which is more for the people who are not necessarily that much into that whole design aspect of things. And maybe they just want a package deal. Even if they have land or don't yet have land, they want to have this sort of whole deal, package deal, ready made, all good, set from the start type of approach. And lastly, but not leastly, the use of external contractors, which is where Matthew MCG is gonna come in and talk about his projects. So the possibility of hiring an external contractor, which is maybe the approach for the more ambitious projects, where you need and want your visions to and your dreams to come to fruition in a way that doesn't compromise at all. So yeah, those are the topics that we're going to be revolving around today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction into the topic and for sharing briefly what the structure of the AMA today will be. So what I think we should do now is just transition over to Matt, who is MCG. I first met Matt here on our Discord server, and I must say that almost immediately I noticed his enthusiasm, his passion for two things. Number one, for architecture and creativity, and then number two, for the metaverse. And one thing about Matt is that his enthusiasm is absolutely infectious. He's a true Cornerstone ambassador. He's brought countless friends to the platform. He thinks the way we think. He dreams the way we dream. And I can't wait to hear from Matt during this AMA. So, Matt, why don't you take it away for us?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. Harvey, thank you. It's great to talk to everybody. This is my first time speaking to all of you, but I feel like we've been engaged for quite some time and some great conversations, and I'm really excited to be here. What I'm going to do is I'll give you, before we start going into the slides, I'll talk a little bit about me, why I chose the metaverse, and kind of where I may see things going, and kind of what my role is, especially kind of as we enter this new age that we're working ourselves into. So I'm an architect and artist in real life. I live in Southern California. I've been working for about 20 years in this field, so I definitely have experience. I've worked in residential, commercial. I've worked for big brands. They do custom homes, that type of thing in real life. And initially I was interested in the metaverse space because I wanted to find an opportunity to have a digital design studio, somewhere that I can bring my clients instead of going to a typical website. They can maybe go visit me at a digital studio on Cornerstone. And it was this idea that I can give my clients in real life this way to experience projects for more than just photos. It's this way to immerse themselves into it. But it was kind of like I opened up this Pandora's box as I started to get into it. And a couple good friends of mine that are on the call today, Henry and Nicole, came to me one day, and they kind of opened my eyes to what the potential is that we can really do and how we can start thinking about how to actually utilize the metaverse in ways I never really had thought of. So I'm really excited to talk about a project that we're working on together. And it's really going to address ways in thinking about workplace engagement, especially since COVID happened. We're all coming and connecting from all these different places in the world. And we want to think about how to encourage kind of like post Zoom, post this type of call, workplace engagement. What is it really going to look and feel like? And how are we going to interact with each other in 5, 10, 20 years, that type of thing. So the last thing I'll say before I get started, I set one ethos for myself when I got into this space. And the most important thing for me is to always talk about and address architecture with the same amount of rigor that I use in real life. So in real life, we have a lot of rules, regulations, we have structural loads, we have all these things that we have to really think about, and we have a lot of liability. And the space that we're entering into, opens ourselves and opens our minds to creativity in ways I'd never really expected I'd be able to do. But it really, to me, makes me feel like we need to address projects in this space with the same amount of attention to detail and thought that some of the best architecture in the world has, because these buildings, even though they may not be physically grounded, the concepts can be tested for future projects as technology grows. So with that, let's get started. Let's go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit about my design process. So again, you guys know I do this in real life, and we kind of had to think about, well, how do we come up with a new way of doing a design process that is oriented towards the metaverse? So we basically have about 5 steps that any project, if you're working with me or any other architect, probably will be working with. The first one is the due diligence and test fit process. So let's just say you purchase a piece of land. You need to know how to build on it. And the most important thing here is to identify site parameters. And Brian has put together an incredible document identifying how to build, the setbacks, the maximum height. All of these things are put in place. So that way, let's just say you have a piece of land in Riverside and you have a really good view of maybe the water. But then in the future, someone comes and builds in front of you and they have this massive, 200-meter skyscraper. All of a sudden you lose access to light, you lose access to views. So we have these parameters set in place to really help us give kind of this equality and access to views, to sunlight, that type of thing. So once we go through this test fit process, we go into a programming and concept development phase. It's a combination of identifying what are the key programmatic elements, what are their spatial relationships, understand and determine adjacencies and circulation, all the things, again, that we use in real life. But how is this going to be implemented into this virtual world? And then in concept development is a really, really exciting phase. That's where we really start to use things like Midjourney. And we can talk about that if there's more time later on in this process, about utilizing these AI tools, which are incredibly powerful, to come up with new ideas and to try to create a story and tell a story behind these projects. I'm a very big storyteller, especially when it comes to design, and I like to root my ideas in metaphors. So that's it's a fun, it's exciting phase. It's really where we get to kind of explore ideas early on. After that, we'll go into a planning and a 2D design phase. It's basically determining space plans, floor plan layouts, understanding kind of how our program gets implemented into a building. And then once we have that, the next obvious process is we got to start to build a 3D model, because that's what is essentially going to be implemented into this project. And then finally, we go into what I call a model implementation and asset transfer phase. So this is kind of like construction in the real world, where I send these NFT files, these assets, over to the Cornerstone team, and then they integrate them into the platform, which you guys have seen with the previous demos. Is just so incredibly exciting. It's a very fun phase, but there's a lot of things that we need to think about: polygon count, material mapping, UV mapping. All of these things need to be considered, and having experience in that task is really important to making sure that you just don't end up with an NFT that you can't do anything with. So let's go to the next slide. So the first project I'm going to talk about is really exciting. This one is located, you can see in the bottom of the map below number 18, that's Capitol Island. So this is like right in the North Circle area. We've got 3 plots. I mentioned earlier Henry and Nicole. The 3 of us have put together an organization where we are trying to look at ways to encourage and bring in the future of workplace engagement. Let's go into the next slide. And what we're going to do is I'll talk about kind of what that process is. So the first step, as I mentioned, is called the test fit. So we need to understand what our building parameters are, what our lot areas are, what our setbacks are. So this first concept model was basically saying, okay, well, we've got these 3 parcels. What are we going to do with them? And the great thing about this project is when you have multiple parcels together, we can connect them, kind of like a lot tie. You can build across lot lines, and what that'll allow you to do is also expand your buildable area. So for the larger lot areas, you get a little bit more building height, that type of thing. So this is a diagram indicating what if I were to build something, what are my parameters? What can I do inside of it? So you'll see the purple is essentially my maximum height above grade. It's 50 meters. You get a 5-meter bonus for any rooftop access. And then you can see down below ground, we've got 25 meters to work with. So we have this huge building envelope. And you also notice at the top of the building how it kind of like cants inward, kind of like a ziggurat or some sort of like pyramid structure. Again, that is to encourage access to sunlight. This is a photorealistic universe, metaverse. This is a space where light and shadows, these are all very important. So having these kind of cutbacks will allow access to those natural light, especially for my neighbors, that type of thing. Let's go into the next slide. After we go through that test fit phase and we understand what we can do, we got to go into programming because we need to know what we're going to do. So understanding what our use cases are. In our project, we are trying to create a space for creators, collaborators, and create place to make connections with people. So for us, if you're a creator, you need a space to have a collaborative work environment. If you're a collaborator, let's think about having team meetings, onboarding, training sessions. And if you're a connector, think about things like exhibitions and conventions. So our idea is we're going to host all of these types of events and meeting spaces. And again, it's immersive. And we're trying to think 5-10 years down the road. And I have great visions for that as we move forward. So after we understand the what, we need to understand the how. So what is the program? Our first phase of programming is called the seed of life. And we're starting with a small structure. So early Olli mentioned something called the democratized metaverse. We're approaching this in a similar fashion. You know, this cornerstone environment isn't built out like an entire city early on. It's going to grow over time and it's going to evolve. And we want this project to kind of have the same aspect. So we're creating 3 spaces. It's a smaller venue to start, but as we get more engagement and as people engage with our project, they're going to have a stake in saying what we want to grow into. So we're going to start with a connection space, some breakout areas, some presentation areas, and some vision for the future. And then that's the why. We need to really understand what is our motivation here. And that's really important because that informs a lot of the decisions and how we're going to make decisions in the design process. Let's go to the next slide. So now we have a program. We need to develop a concept. And again, I'm a storyteller. If I'm designing a project, it's not just, oh, let's put some pretty shapes together. It's understanding why are people venturing to this space? What are the primary functions? We have to ask a lot of probing questions because those questions will inform our design and make the space unique for us. So if you're working with me, I ask a lot of questions, again, both in real life and in metaverse life. They get probing, but everything helps, and even the smallest thing can lead to a great idea. And that's what's really exciting about creating concepts. Let's go to the next slide. So here's an idea about kind of where I see things going. Phase 1 is kind of where we're at right now. We're taking this initial step into this metaverse space. We're all talking on our phones or on our computers. We're kind of in this like screen-oriented space. Everything is a little bit disjointed, but we have to think about where technology is leading us and where the metaverse is going to lead us. So let's just say in a few years, all of a sudden, immersive environments start to become a thing. So instead of going into the office, there's these workplace pods. There's these immersive environments where you're still disconnected from others, but you feel a little bit more immersed. You don't have to put on a VR headset to have a virtual meeting, right? And then long term, I mean, we're going to be so plugged in. You know, I've heard things like instead of Homo sapien, we're like Homo techno now, right? We're plugged into this AI technology. But imagine sitting down and being able to put on a contact or glasses and transporting yourself to another environment. And that's where we're leading. Let's go to the next slide. So Now we're getting into the concept phase. Concept development for our project, this is called the Tree of Life. We start with these mid-journey images, and all of that, those previous steps really help to inform kind of what we're going to do. And what we came up with was this concept of the Tree of Life. And there's a really, really important backstory behind it. Overall, we're going for something that's an inspired sculptural form. It's informed by biomimicry. And the idea is that this building has these really interesting connections and these metaphors from how, what we're trying to do with workplace engagement, but also how does that translate into architecture? Let's go to the next slide. So what we came up with here is this idea. So what you're looking at on the left side is this concept of our seed of life building. Essentially what it is, the top part is this above ground structure that has these connection spaces, and it's all centered around this quote unquote tree of life. What's interesting about this thing is structurally and sculpturally, it kind of has this reminiscence of these organic features, but below grade, where you see this kind of blue thing below it, that is where the real exciting inspiration came for this project. So we're relating this idea of tree of life and kind of this natural environment to the idea of mycelium. And for us, the mycelium in real life is a fungal network that essentially ties plant life together. It will supply nutrients, it will supply water, it'll even cut itself off from neighboring, let's say, trees in the forest if there's a diseased tree, etc. And what inspired me was this idea that this network that connects this tree can be integrated into this idea of kind of these data networks that we're working with right now, right? How do we combine and connect people and enrich people's lives from all around the world into one space? So what we're looking at here is the first phase. You'll see kind of at the center of the floor plan is the seed of life. It is a small round building. It's very modest compared to the size of the overall site, but we're going to grow into it, especially as we get more engagement. As the people that we have come to the site, they're going to engage and give us their ideas and help voting protocols and all these types of things to, again, create this democratized use of space. Go to the next slide. So the floor plan in this concept, we start very rough, very kind of like conceptual. What are we going to have? So we have a connection space right at the center. We have this structural and this like organic tree of life that really acts as the centerpiece of our project. And then we have some breakout rooms and that type of thing behind it. And then below grade, again, is this idea that we've got a space for 75 to 100 people, all surrounded by this really interesting like root structure that, again, that connection to that mycelial network that I mentioned. Go to the next slide. So in 3D, this is kind of where we're at now. We're just starting to actually convert these great AI images into an actual form, an actual building structure. So that we're not done yet. We're still kind of working through this. But you could start to see kind of where we're going to go with this. As we kind of develop in this project, I'll send updates. I'll put updates if anyone's interested on the Discord channels. Let's go to the next slide. And then the next project, I got one more, which we'll talk about quickly, is just as exciting. I won't go through all the steps in the process, but this is for another client that's commissioned Asset Reveal, Jas Mills. He's got a really, really exciting project at the North Circle. Let's go to the next slide. And again, you start with the same thing. We've got a test fit. What are our building parameters? Since we started, this phase currently is this idea of a gallery and an event structure that is a place to reveal these. NFTs are a big thing right now, but they're going to be even bigger than any of us think they really are. So anything from wearables to digital art to even the buildings that we're putting together, these are all things that are digital assets that need a space to be introduced to the world. So let's go to the next slide. The concept behind this one was rooted in a lot of really interesting ideas. Sacred geometries, proportions, the idea of chakra, and this idea of creating this whimsical modern space that, just as the name kind of talks about, you'll see the Midjourney image on the left. It's this idea of looking behind the veil, finding yourself behind the drapes, and kind of discovering new things. Go to the next slide. And kind of where we landed on this project is this really beautiful sculptural structure. It's informed kind of like a Frank Gehry-ish form. You can see it starts to look like the building on the outside is this beautiful museum. It's like this drapery. It's this idea that you're behind those drapes, you're gonna find something new. You'll see some really interesting images that we created that really talk about and inform where we're gonna take the architectural design. Let's go to the next slide. And then finally, I think the best way to kind of summarize this project is kind of a culmination of three pieces. We've got a structural component, which is formed around this Metatron cube. If you're not familiar with sacred geometries, this is a very, very powerful thing. And architecture dating back to ancient Egypt and Greece, they all used proportion and geometries to inform their designs. And there's a reason why those buildings are so important. And I said earlier, using the same rigor and design in the metaverse is important. We're doing that with this project in an incredible detail. So we've got this really beautiful structural component that's wrapped with this white sculptural drapery that, again, talks about that idea of that quote-unquote asset reveal. And then you have this idea that you can tie in your brand in the form of the architecture. So you can kind of see that we've got this logo kind of informing where we're going to take the design in the future. So we're starting 3D on this one right now. I'm really excited to show you guys where this goes as well. Thank you guys so much.
Wow.
Oh, I had one more slide, guys. I'm sorry. I'll keep it super quick. Okay, so why hire an architect? I'm not saying you have to, but you can hear the passion in my voice. You can hear about how I try to create stories. We have experience in design. I've got 20 years of experience. We understand the tools and the requirements and how to get projects done, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. I can't wait to see what you guys are going to show right now about the integration of AI 3D integration. Super excited to see what even, somebody that doesn't do this for a living comes up with. But if anyone ever needs any help, or even just feedback and criticism or just some thoughts, I'm always here for anybody. And I really appreciate being part of this project with you all.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. I had quickly seen those slides in preparation for this AMA, but now that you've highlighted the architectural elements of each of those structures and talk through it from your perspective, it is absolutely mind-blowing. And everyone just give Matt a virtual clap right now, because that was just fascinating just hearing him. And as I mentioned before, Matt, you could see that he's very passionate about this sort of thing. So once again, just a quick plug for Matt. If you are a landowner, or you're looking to become a landowner and you'd like, a very specific design for your plot, get in touch with Matt and he'll be able to help you out, as I know he's already done for other landowners within Cornerstone. Let's shift now over to another way that you could build on Cornerstone, which is plot bundles. Now, for those who were at our last AMA a couple of weeks ago, the CEO of the Zoan Group, Mika, mentioned that we will be releasing plot bundles. And I'm going to now hand it over to Brian, who is the architect of Cornerstone, to share a little bit more about what these plot bundles are and information on those who may qualify and how it all works. So why don't you take that away for us, Brian?
All right, thanks, Harvey. As you said, last AMA, Mika went through touching on the plot bundles, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time to kind of go into a little bit more depth and give a overall summary about like what they are and why we decided to go with them. So you heard from Matthew that one option is to go and hire a professional to design and develop your plot. If you may not have the resources, the accessibility, we wanted to create a one-stop shop option where you can, if you don't have a plot already, purchase a plot, and along with that, a building at the same time. So the different sizes and styles will depend on the size of the plot and location. We're exploring the customability of it. So, for example, if you're buying this ready-made building, you will have the ability to customize the interior. We're exploring the idea about the exterior, but being able to make these buildings your own once you've purchased them. This will all be able to be purchased through the Bazaar, so the N-World marketplace. So it creates an easy location just to go and buy your plot and your building at the same time. And it's a perfect solution for someone, like I said, who may not know what they want from their building. They are looking for a certain style. They don't know what it's called. And they see something attractive that they like and interesting, and it allows them to have a fast, easy, and enjoyable experience in purchasing a plot bundle. After this slide, we have 3 examples we've been working on. They're very much still architecturally need some improvement, but to get the idea of how this would look inside Cornerstone. So if Olli, if you could run the next 3 videos, please. Yeah, so you're able to see the 3 different building typologies of different sizes inside Cornerstone. The architecture, again, trying to really want to perfect it and make it something desirable by everybody. But I think they're already getting to a spot to where we're really happy with the results. And we're now developing a total of 10 in the beginning. And it's, again, to hopefully this creates an easier and an enjoyable way to develop your plot if you need a little bit of assistance. And I think the next one is the focusing now on the 3D AI.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Brian. And now, Olli, perhaps you can share a little bit about the third, but it's also kind of like, it's like the, what we foresee in the future kind of method of building in Cornerstone, which is 3D generated AI structures.
Yeah, sure. So 3D AI, as I mentioned, and as has been mentioned already a lot of times, is the code name for this project. And as I also mentioned, but it's worth repeating, that we, the Cornerstone team, want to enable the community to create. We want you guys to have the power and the tools to create those amazing experience and enable people to create something according to their dreams, their visions, and have people around the world experience that, no matter where they are, no matter what expertise that is. And 3D AI is just one of those tools that we want to give out. And it's more about, as I said, the creativity. So letting your creativity flow, letting your imagination fly, because in the end, that's kind of such a big part of what the metaverse is about. The possibility of the impossible, in a way, without the limitations of the real world, and making dreams into a reality in a way that's kind of as immersive as if you were sleeping and dreaming at night. Like when you have this really immersive dream where you wake up and you're like, oh, that felt so real. To have the power and the ability to take that feeling and put it somewhere, build it somewhere into the metaverse. So that's kind of the motivation behind 3D AI. And I'm just gonna go over. You guys should be seeing some video footage of what this project 3D AI looks like right now. Bear in mind that this is all still very early in development. All of it is subject to change. But this is going to give you a rough idea on what you can do and how you're going to be able to do it with 3D AI in the future. So let me just hit play on that, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah. So we started off with being able to use a set of parameters to control the size of the building, the shape of the building. So you start off with a very rough template, and using the building guidelines, using the data from that to understand the offset and building limitations vertically, you can then choose the size of your building, the architectural styles if you want something more modern, minimalist, contemporary, a blend, and then going in more depth into architectural stylings from specific architects: Zaha Hadid, Snoetta, Frank Gehry, Frank Lloyd Wright, Alvaro Aalto. Just a set of parameters that help fine tune and tweak and find something that you're looking for inside of the 3D AI.
Yeah, and this might look very familiar to some people, like the ability to manipulate objects, move them around, duplicate them, replicate them, arrange them as you wish. If anybody's familiar with, like, say, for example, 3D modeling software such as Blender or 3ds Max, or even game engines, or even games like The Sims, for example, it's sort of very easy to use, simple controls. Anybody can use it. It's aimed for each and every single one of us, with or without, as I said, the technical expertise or the technical know-how in 3D modeling, for example. So it's a builder inside Cornerstone that allows landowners to play around, visualize what they want to build, what their vision is, what their dream is, and just make that come to life in a way that's easy to use and, most importantly, fun. So even though you're doing something, you're building a house, we still want it to feel like it's fun. We want to have your creative juices flowing, and just all in all, enjoy the experience as you are using this editor or this builder that we call 3D AI. And I'm just gonna jump ahead just a little bit. Well, actually, no. As you see on the right hand side of the view of the video, generated assets, popular items, MetaMask inventory. That's all stuff that's going to be in 3D AI. So obviously, you'll have a chance to include items, include stuff that you brought from for example the in-game marketplace, whether it's a sofa, whether it's a table, whether it's a wallpaper or a texture for your walls or your floors. You'll see popular items such as the sofas on the middle over there, as well as your MetaMask inventory, which allows you to use the objects that you have in your wallet to put those inside your creations. So there's that interoperability, which is once again such a big part of the whole metaverse idea, that you can take something that you bought somewhere, come into Cornerstone and put that into use in your building. And the next stage, once you're done sort of defining your building and populating it with items that you've collected from wherever, is a chance to actually go into the world, which would be a separate instance in Cornerstone. So as you're still building, you're still modeling around, you're playing around with different elements and seeing how it all looks. You'll have the ability to change the weather, change the time of day to see what your building would look like when it's golden hour in the morning or the evening, or noon, or when it's rainy or when it's snowing or whatever it is. And as you saw the avatar running around, you can literally go inside what you are building to see if it feels like you wanted it to feel. Like when you're actually inside what you built, maybe it was too crowded with items that you put in. Maybe it's a bit too, what's the word I'm looking for? Narrow corridors, for example, not as spacious as you wanted it to be. Basically, complete control on what you're creating and the ability to feel the entire space and what you are creating.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what you've mentioned, Olli, AI-generated 3D structures and items is still very early in its very infant stages. But I just want everyone who's present here just to imagine for a moment, right? I imagine that you have heard of AI. You've perhaps used AI. Maybe you've gone onto platforms like ChatGPT. Imagine the day where you can simply put a prompt, text into a prompt saying, I want this type of structure, this size, I want it to go underground this amount of meters or feet. I want a declining scale because the land isn't straight, it's disproportionate. Imagine the day where you can simply put a prompt into a tool, an AI generated 3D tool, where you can create anything that you can think of, whatever comes to the top of your mind. And this really comes to the point, once again, of democratization of the metaverse, because the bottleneck for the metaverse right now is the structural creation. If you are a metaverse that creates structures for landowners, then you are potentially having to create thousands upon thousands upon thousands of unique structures. And you can imagine like the ordeal, the workload for something like that. On the other hand, if you are like us, like Cornerstone, you're providing the land, but putting the structure in the hands of the landowners, then each landowner's responsible for building their structure within a world like Cornerstone. When it comes to AI-generated 3D structures, we're empowering landowners who may not be 3D designers, 3D modelers. We're empowering them to be able to bring their dreams to life. Now, once again, I want to emphasize that this is very early, this kind of technology, but we envision that in the future, something like that will be possible, where you're simply putting a prompt together, and in the same way that you do it with ChatGPT, you're putting a prompt together, and the artificial intelligence creates the structure for you, which you can then implement onto your plot. Technology is not available yet, but if you think about the trajectory of artificial intelligence and where it's going, I don't think it's a stretch to say and to imagine that something like this is on the horizon, and it's just around the corner. AI technology is exponential. So the more it's used, the faster it learns. The more it's used, the faster it grows. And so when it comes to something like 3D generated structures, the more it's used, the more it grows and the more it learns. And the faster it not only becomes, but the faster the technology grows. And so we're saying this all to say just that it's on our radar. It's been on our radar for months. Ever since Midjourney was released, Stable Diffusion was released, and we've been using these tools internally as a team. We have been alerted to the fact that AI-generated 3D structures are not just a very real possibility, but they could be around the corner sooner than we anticipated. And this is an incredible tool, again, for the democratization of the metaverse. Now, another method that you could employ when it comes to building in Cornerstone in relation to AI-generated 3D models is exactly what Matt MCG was mentioning before, where you jump on Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, you create a kind of a model, something that already is inspiring, something that is appealing, something that is architecturally sound, and then that is being 3D modeled manually with the skill set that someone like Matt possesses in Unreal Engine. But that's another method that you could design from 3D AI art. But the technology isn't there yet for us to do it in real time, where it's creating a file which can then be implemented into a digital world like Cornerstone. But I strongly anticipate that this will be available in the future, and so does the Cornerstone team, and that would be a really amazing tool which would empower our landowners to be able to create something absolutely incredible in the metaverse. I don't know if Olli and Brian, if you want to mention anything, any last words just on the 3D AI section before we move to questions.
Just to echo a little bit about what you said, this type of thing, these type of AI tools that generate things for you based off a prompt or a drawing or whatever it is that it's based off, the beauty of it is that it literally gives anybody without any prior knowledge or expertise the possibility and the ability to create pretty much anything. And that, to me, is the mind-blowing thing about this, and that's the beauty of it, and that is exactly why we are so interested and so invested in these types of tools.
Yeah, absolutely. What we might do now is, just before we close, because I know we're now past the hour, and people need to get about doing their day. But I just wanted to have a couple of opportunities for questions. And this one is for Matt. This is coming from me personally, Matt. And I have a comment that I wanted to mention, and then a question. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who was a web developer about AI, and he said something that I found absolutely fascinating and quite intriguing. And as I've thought about it, I actually agree with him. He was saying that the low-end web developers will get wiped out by AI technology. We're already seeing Chat GPT do basic functions that web developers who have basic knowledge of web development. We're seeing Chat GPT already make their jobs superfluous. But he was saying, my friend, the need for high-end developers will only become more accentuated with the market being flooded by AI development. And Matt, as you were talking, I could hear your passion, I could hear your enthusiasm, and it seems to me like you have that unique set of skills. You're one of those high-end creators and developers, and I firmly believe that AI technology simply can't copycat the skill set that you have, and the need for like the sort of service that you provide, I think will always be there. And so in light of all of that, I know that there are landowners who are already contracting your services to design their structures. How can someone get in contact with you, perhaps one of our landowners or a future landowner? How can they get in touch with you and start the conversation of contracting you for your services?
Thanks so much. I appreciate bringing that up. I have to say real quick, I think you're completely right about AI kind of eliminating some of that low end. But on the whole scale of things, like you just showed us, the ability to allow anybody to utilize these tools is really, really powerful. And for me, at first, when I first started playing with Midjourney, this might have been in September, Brian actually introduced it to me. I didn't know what to think. But then I started to harness it and understand how it worked. And I realized it's an extension of my tool set, and it's a way to tell that story and to really try to explore so many new ideas and options. My own Midjourney profile, I've almost got 10,000 rendered images at this point. I mean, you'll get a random idea in the middle of the night. You can crank it out, look at it. You can explore ideas so much faster. So not only allowing anybody to develop these ideas and come up with concepts from the low to medium to the high end, I really think it's a really valuable tool for everybody. And I can't even wait to use the 3D asset generator as well. As far as getting in touch with me, I'm on Discord. Just feel free to DM me. I think that's probably the easiest since we're all kind of in that same channel. We've got a great organization. I mentioned earlier that we're building this tree of life. We've developed this organization called Allura, and our intention here is to bring brands to help them tell their stories in the metaverse, and again, try to create the future of workplace engagement, etc. So I look forward to hearing from anybody. And again, even if it's not to engage with me, I'm happy to provide feedback, advice, what have you. I just want to be a part of this process and this community. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. And I have to say that your business idea, this idea that you three have of perhaps let's say a client comes to you and they say, we want this kind of structure, and you're able to then mold that and create that in 3D, place it onto your plot, and have an immersive world in which that client can then see that land rather than just photos. They can see it in real time. They can move, they can shift, they can fly, they can see from the top, from within, from under and around. That's absolutely fascinating. And for that to then be used as a model for that building to be constructed in real life, like your business plan and your idea, I'm regularly citing to my friends. I'm just telling my friends, like, wow, this is like, even the ones who are skeptical about the metaverse, here's a real life use case for not only how the metaverse can be monetized, but then how life and architecture and businesses can be enhanced. So we really appreciate you coming on, and thanks heaps for sharing all those insights and all those designs. And man, just really looking forward to what you'll continue to produce, both for other landowners, but then also within your own plots. I have another question as well. I might ask this to Brian. Brian, you were talking about the plot bundles, and this was announced a couple of weeks ago with Mika. One question that I've had people ask me is, when will these plot bundles be made available? And how many will be available? How does that work? Would you be able to provide a bit of insight on that?
So the timeline is a bit tricky, just for the aspect of having the assets ready. That's something, hopefully, as soon as possible is always the best answer. So the proverbial soon. We are developing 10 for this first round and seeing what the demand is, and then be able to go from there and estimate